Safeguarding.
The purpose of this section is to look at aspects of safeguarding and is designed to help adults in Scouting recognise and understand their responsibilities in implementing the Scout Association's child protection policy and anti-bullying policies. Therefore, the objectives of this section are to know and understand the importance of the Scout Association's Child Protection Code of Behaviour, explain your role in protecting young people from harm, give practical examples of how the Code of Good Practice Young People First should be implemented by themselves and other adults in Scouting, explain the steps to take where child abuse is suspected or alleged, list the 4 categories of abuse and describe the factors that make young people more vulnerable to abuse, and describe the approaches to identify and prevent bullying.
As an adult volunteer in Scouting, you have been placed in a position of trust, whatever your role, and you need to carry out your role in accordance with the Scout Association's policies and procedures. The Child Protection Policy applies to all adults and primarily protects those under the age of 18. An Explorer Scout needs to be afforded the same standard of protection as a Beaver Scout, although the ways in which protection is provided may differ. The Young People First Code of Practice, also known as the Yellow Card, gives practical guidance on the child protection policy and a code of good behaviour for all adults in Scouting. The code should be followed at all times, whenever adults have contact with youth members, not just at Scout meetings and activities. It is the policy of the Scout Association to safeguard the welfare of all members by protecting them from neglect and from physical, sexual and emotional harm. All adults in Scouting should have a personal copy to keep and refer to. In your role in Scouting, you'll be helping to protect young people from harm if you follow some simple guidance. You should ensure that your behaviour is appropriate at all times, not just on Scout activities, and does not lead to misinterpretation. You observe the rules established for the safety and security of young people. You follow the procedures following suspicion, disclosure or allegation of child abuse. You recognise the position of trust in which you have been placed. In every respect, the relationships you form with young people are appropriate. You keep and follow the advice and procedures on the Yellow Card. You listen to young people. There are 4 categories of abuse: physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, neglect. Physical abuse is where the young person's body is hurt or injured, often to relieve an adult's frustration. Possible signs of physical abuse include unexplained injuries, untreated injuries, excessive physical punishment, frightened when in the presence of their parent or carer, crying or putting up a fight when it's time to go home. Sexual abuse is where the young person is used by adults or peers to satisfy sexual desires or is subject to sexual talk or materials. Possible signs of sexual abuse include lack of trust with adults, display of sexual knowledge or curiosity beyond the child's years, over-sexualized behaviours, fear of a particular individual, reluctance or refusal to take part in physical activity or to change clothes for games, soiling or wetting in previously continent children. Emotional abuse is where the young person is frightened by threats and taunts, bullying, subjected to excessive shouting, belittling and teasing, or given responsibilities beyond their years. Possible signs of emotional abuse include low self-esteem, self-harm, fearful, behaving out of character. Neglect is where adults fail to care for young people and protect them from danger, leading to the serious impairment of the young person's health. Possible signs of neglect include constant hunger, poor personal hygiene, constant tiredness, poor state of clothing, untreated medical problems. Whilst these signs have been referred to here, adults must remember that there may be a variety of reasons for any of these behaviours, and it is important to refer and not investigate concerns. Whilst any young person can be abused by an adult or another young person, some may be more vulnerable than others. Those more vulnerable include those with disabilities, those with low self-esteem, those who live mostly in a virtual world on the internet, those whose internet access is unmonitored, those who are subject to stereotyping and prejudice because of ethnicity, sexuality, disadvantage or appearance. What should you do if you suspect that a young person is being abused? This could be because a young person tells you of abuse by someone else. An adult or young person expresses concerns for another young person. Unexplained injury or changes in behaviour are observed which gives cause for concern. You receive an allegation about another person or about yourself. In any of these situations where there are concerns, write down what has been said. Report it to your line manager. If your line manager is involved, refer to someone higher in the management chain or safeguarding team at headquarters. Do not investigate. The focus groups that you are now going to watch are going to discuss and consider 3 scenarios. They are going to be asked to consider whether the scenario demonstrates safe practice, consider whether there is anything else they should think about, and identify any do's and don'ts from the yellow card which they feel are particularly applicable.
But this session is looking at the code of behaviour, which we call the yellow card. Now, this is it's very important. It gives us the guidelines and the rules about how we behave around young people, right? But we're not going to go down the list and say this is right and this is wrong. We're going to take an area and talk about it as a discussion, and then we'll draw out points about what things are acceptable and what things are not acceptable. You've got a young person, right, who's obviously distressed, right, and to deal with that situation, the leader sits that young person on their knee. Why do you think that might be a problem?
I don't think that's acceptable,
Right.
because you shouldn't have that much personal contact with a young person.
So we've got a little 6-year-old in the beaver section, and they've been running and playing a game outside, and they fall over and they graze their knee, and they've got their knees all grazed in the right mess. And you say, very, very sorry, I can't have anything to do with you, and he's in floods of tears. Can't you do something for him? It's about looking at the individual and the individual circumstances. There is no black and white answer. There's no saying you can put beavers on your knee, but you can't put cubs on your knee. Maybe a lot of 11 and 12-year-old boys wouldn't even, if they grazed their knee, they wouldn't go to mum and go and sit on a knee, would they?
Yeah.
You know, but a little 6-year-old would.
Yeah.
You know, and there's this sort of locus parentis, you know, that you're caring for them, you're looking after them while they're in your care. You don't actually have to sit them physically on your knee. You can sit next to them, or you can sit on the floor in front of them. And it might be, especially with minor cuts and grazing and bumps, you know, it might be just a matter of giving them a little cuddle and they feel better. And 5 minutes later, they're running around like a mad thing again, aren't they?
To protect his privacy, should I not just take him out of the room?
To ensure safe practice, what you've got to think about is looking at the young person's privacy, but also looking at your practice is safe. So you might be in a position where you've got another leader on the team who can come into the kitchen area or a private area with you, leaving another group of leaders looking after the cubs, the scouts and the beavers or whatever. But actually what we talked about was sitting a distressed young person. That's where we started from, and I know I went down the graze knee route. But you can have a young person distressed for a number of reasons, and they might disclose to you about something very, very personal because they feel they can trust you. Right? What do you think you do with that information? Offer understanding and reassurance. But also very importantly, don't judge them. Write down precisely what the child said and write it in their own words. Do not change it to your language. Right? So, so important. And it's so important for the statutory agencies that they actually get it sort of first hand.
So what if a child tells me something, but they really, really don't want me to tell anyone else? What do I do?
Right. You're in a position where, as in a position of trust, that you've got to tell somebody what's happened. But you've also got to reassure the young person that you're there for them and that you understand their concerns. But by telling somebody, you might be able to provide some help and support for them in their situation that they find themselves in.
The key learning points in this scenario include: it is okay to offer comfort and reassurance to a distressed young person. Carefully consider if physical contact is appropriate. Remember that the Code of Behaviour states you should keep other leaders informed of what you are doing. You should be in sight or hearing of others, and you should follow the code at sensitive moments. Ensure the contact isn't threatening, intrusive, or subject to misinterpretation, and is age appropriate to the young person. Write down and report any situation that may give rise to concern.
Is it okay for me to give a scout a lift to a meeting on my own if he's got no other way of getting there?
That is not safe practice. The Code of Behaviour is very clear. There should be another person with you.
But what if the parents say it's okay?
That doesn't really matter. The Code of the Association is very, very clear that their views can't override the policies of the association. You should always have another person with you.
The leader knew the young person outside of scouting. Does that make a difference?
Yeah, you've got this situation. It could be the next door neighbour, right? What's people's thoughts? Does it make any difference?
Surely if the parents know each other and it's an agreement, then Scouts doesn't start until you get to the meeting.
Well, this is the difficult situation, isn't it? Because the rules of the association are very clear on that, really, that there should not be this one-to-one relationship. It becomes a very, very difficult area, isn't it? But if the idea is that a Scout leader should not be on their own on a one-to-one relationship with a young person on any travel.